this tutorial I'll show you how to create a health bar by using the new UI system from Unity 4.6. Currently Unity 4.6 is still in beta, so you have to find the beta site on Unity's homepage to download it. As you can see, the health bar is placed in the top left corner here, and no matter what kind of resolution I put it in, it will still stay in the same position without scaling and without getting stretched or hidden behind the edges of the screen. So we'll also look at how we can place a UI element like this without and making sure that it doesn't go out of the screen view when we change the size of the screen. So I created a test scene here, and as you can see, I have two particle areas here, and if I go into the red area, my health will be reduced and the health bar will start getting smaller, and it will start changing color from green to red. So if I go into the red here, you can see that the health is reduced and the health bar is still slowly changing from green to the reddish color. And if I go into the green one, the opposite happens. I gain health slowly and the health bar goes from the red scale to the green scale. And as you can see, I have my health written underneath here. So if I go in, I can also read it out in the numeric data if that's what I want. So in this tutorial I'll show you how to set up a test scene like this, and then we'll get started putting up the UI and make sure that everything works as it should be. Okay, so before we start the actual tutorial with the health bar, I would like to show you how to set up that little sample scene I showed you before. It's not very complicated, and I'm gonna go over it real quick so that we can get to the interesting part with the health bar. If you want to skip this part with the sample scene, then you can just click the link on the screen, and then you will jump to the part where we start with the health bar. And you can also go to the link in the description to download the project with the sample scene set up. Okay, let's get started. First thing I want to do is to add a plane so that I can walk on something. So I'm just going to move this down so I can see it on my camera. Okay, there's some errors here. Yes. And then I'm going to add a new light object here so that I can see everything. Just going to move my camera back a little, like that. Then I want to add my player, which is a 3D object cube. Just going to rename that to player. And I'm gonna move my cube down so that we can see it. What else? I'm gonna change my cube's color by adding a material called player, and I'm just gonna change this color real quick to blue. Don't worry that I'm going a little fast here. I'm gonna slow things down whenever we get to the interesting part. The plane is a little small though. It's not small. It's just my camera that is very close here. Okay, then I'm gonna add the particle system. Let's just start creating the red one. So we change the color in the particle system real quick to red. Start delay is 5, speed 0, starting size 5, and we just want some gravity -1. Let's just put it on the edge here. Then move it a little up. There we go. Looks a little crazy, but yeah. Okay, so we want to have some collision in our particle system, so just add component and then go to box collider. And this box collider is real big, as you can see, so we're just gonna scale it down a little by dragging the x-axis to the edges of this particle system and the y to the edges. So now we can collide normally. And I'm just going to rename this particle system to damage. And I'm going to duplicate this and create one called health. And then I'm going to change the color to green. That's basically the only difference between the two of them. Just move the green one to the left side here. Okay, so now we want our player to be able to move around, so I'm just going to add a script real quick called player script. And in that script we're going to add all our functionality. We need the player to move, so let me public float speed. Then we're going to make a public, I'm actually going to make it private, handle movement. and this is going to be our function that makes the player move around. So we're going to make translation equals speed times delta time, so that we can move frame rate independent. Okay, so when we've done that, we make transform.translate, so that we can move the player, and then we're just going to get the axes here. So new vector 3. So the first one is the x-axis, so that's just input dot get axis horizontal, and the next one is 0 because I don't want to move up, and the last one's input dot get axis vertical. There you go. And then of course we need to multiply with our speed, or sorry, my translation. So behind here I'm just going to say times translation. So so that we move an amount of an amount in our game per second instead of per frame. And this makes it frame rate independent. And remember to call handle movement in our update so that we can move around. Okay, let's go back into Unity, take the script, attach it to our player, have it here, and we give him 5 speed. We also need to be able to collide with these two, and the names are health and damage. I'm just gonna go to the script again and make void on trigger stay, and it needs a collider as parameter, and I'm just going to say if other.name equals health, then debug get healed, and then I'm just going to copy this one and say if it's damage, just going to write taking damage, and there you go. This is just a debugging test. So if we go back to Unity and we go to our player, we need to check we have a box collider, we need a rigid body, and the gravity is fine. Then we need to add to our damage that it's a trigger, and our health needs to be a trigger, and now we should be able to enter these and write debugging taking damage and getting healed. Okay, so now we're ready to create the health bar in the corner of the screen and start working with that. Okay, so let's slow things down a bit and start working on the health bar part. As you can see, I created some different shapes here that you can use for the health bar, and I'm gonna go with the 2 bottom ones here, so that because that's the shape I like best. But anyway, you can start using any of these if you want to, if you think this one with the V shape here is more fancy than the one with the straight line here. But now we need to import these into our Unity project so that we can use them for creating our UI. I'm just going to close this down, and as you can see, I have it in a folder here, and what I'm going to do is just to take this one and drag it into my asset folder, and then I have imported it. So the first thing we need to do before we can start creating the health bar from these sprites here is to change the texture type. So as you can see, it has like a texture type of texture, which we're not interested in because we're working with a sprite or UI element. So we need to change this texture into a sprite 2D and UI. So you do that by clicking texture type and selecting the 2D and UI. So as you can see, there's a sprite mode here, and for now single is selected. Single means that we work with a single image. For example, if we have an animation or something where every single part of the animation is divided into a single image. But in our case, we're working with kind of a sprite sheet where every single image is on the same image. Every single sprite is in the same image, of course. And we can edit that by selecting the sprite mode and select multiple. And then we can go to the sprite editor, which is used to slice up all these different sprites so we can use them individually. And for now we just put the automatic type here. If we would put a grid, we could select how big the grid was for each sprite. For example, if we had a sprite sheet with lots of animations and we knew that there was 64 pixels in between each. But for now we just pick automatically, and then it looks at the alpha values so that it can figure out how to slice these. So we press the slice button, and as you can see, it slices up these kind of fine so that we have an edge around each sprite. But the top one here is a little out of place. As you can see, it has a lot of white space around it. Just take that one and drag it to the X by clicking that box, and then you can drag it down so that it fits better. Anyway, when you have done this, you simply click the apply button, and now it has sliced all these sprites into individual images. So if we click at the health bar here, you can see that there's little arrow here if you look at it, and then you can open it and see that it sliced every single image in there into an individual image we can work with. And I'm gonna work with the health bar 5 and 6 because that's that one with the straight line I like best. Okay, so to add this to our screen, we need to create a UI element, and we do that by selecting UI. And then you can see we have lots of different options here, and we're gonna go with an image just to show our health bar. When you create this image, you'll notice that it actually also adds a canvas to our scene. And that's because every single UI element needs a canvas before it can be rendered to the screen. And you can create as many canvases as you want in one scene, but one canvas can also have more UI elements in it. If there isn't a canvas inside the scene, when you create an UI element, it's going to create this canvas for you. So as you can see, we also have our image here, and if you select it, you'll see that it has this new component called rect transform. And the rect transform basically replaces the normal transform. If we click on anything else, you'll see that there's this normal transform with position, rotation, and scale. And this image here, basically, this rect transform, of course, basically replaces that. So we have a position X, Y, and Z axis, and we have the width and a height of this this new component here, this new game object. As you can see, it has this image script on it, and that's what makes it into an image that we can show on the screen. And it has this source image, and that's what we want to change into the shape of the health bar. So if we click on the source image and scroll down until we find the health bar I want health bar 5, and click it. As you can see, it has a weird shape right now, and that's because it has a standard shape whenever we create a new UI element. But we can change this by selecting the new rect tool, which is used to manipulate this rect transform. And it's very handy. It works like any other imaging editing software. You can hold the shift down to scale it. You can rotate it by going to the corner and rotate like this. But we want to rescale it so that it fits our needs. So you can just basically scale it as you want it, so it has a size that you think is very useful for a health bar. I think I'm gonna scale it like this. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it like this. So you can place it wherever you want it. You can place it in the bottom corner if you want it there, or in one of the top corners if you want it in the middle of the screen. But I'm gonna place it in the top left of the screen because that's where health bars usually are placed. Okay, so I don't want mine to be white, so I'm gonna click the color here and select the background to be black, because this is gonna be the background of our health bar. So I'm just gonna rename this by clicking on it and pressing F2, and then I'm gonna rename to health background, or just background. Yes, so now we have the background itself, but we need something on top of it so that we can show our health. But as you saw in the demo before, or the intro before that, when my health is reduced, there's a little gray area behind it, so we can see how much our health would take up if we regained it. So we're gonna add that first. So right click on your background and click UI and select image again, and this creates a child object of this background element. And this child object is basically gonna be health background. Just rename it to health background like this. And as we did before, we need to change the shape of it. So we select the source image, scroll down to the image you want. I'm going to select health bar 6. And as you can see, it has this weird shape again. So just rescale it into whatever you want it to. You can zoom in if it's hard to see where you're putting stuff. And then just place it wherever you want it so it looks very nice. I'm gonna place it like this, I think. So it has the kind of the same edge around it on top and the bottom. So this background, I don't know what color you want, but I want it to be gray, so select the health background color and put it wherever you want. I want it to be like light gray like this. This is a little too dark, light gray. When you've done that, we need to create the actual health that goes on top of this bar so that we can manipulate it and show that our health is being reduced somehow. And we can do that by either right-clicking on the health bar here and pressing duplicate, or clicking it and pressing Ctrl D. So the bottom one here is going to be the visual health. So this is the visual part, and we want our health to be green, so as standard, so click the visual health, or I want it to be green as standard at least, and just select the green color like this. So now it's starting to look like something. This visual health needs to be a child of the health background, so just drag it into the health background like this. So now the visual part is done so far, but we need to do one more thing before we can make the effect that we want. If we try to drag this, you can see that this is actually the effect we want. We want to get dragged to the left like this, so that our health is reduced whenever we change the position of this visual health. But as you can see, there's one thing that is wrong. That is that in the back here, you're still able to see that this health bar overlaps the edge and the rest of the screen. And we want to make sure that it only goes to the edge here whenever we drag it to the left. Because the front part here is exactly what we want. We want it to look like this. So when we regain our health, it looks like this. Okay, so how can we do this? Well, we can actually just add a mask to our parent element here. And a mask basically does that whenever shape this image has is the boundaries of the child. So let's look at it maybe and better explain when I show you. If I click on the health background here, click add and write mask, as I did here, then you can add a mask, and when that mask is on, it looks at the image of the game object, and it takes the shape. So health bar 6 has this exact same shape as the green one has, and then it masks everything that is inside the shape. So everything that's outside is invisible, and that goes for child elements, of course. So this child element is now masked, so everything that is outside the boundaries of this parent element is invisible. So if we drag it now, you'll see that it gets reduced real fine here without overlapping the edges of the parent, because it has a mask on it. So now it's masked and it looks fine. So one more thing we need to do is to add the health text here. We can do that by right-clicking on the background, selecting UI, and then selecting text. And my text is going to say health, and then the amount of health. Just going to put it at 100 as standard, and we can change this for my script, of course. And then I'm going to place it in the bottom here. I'm going to change the color to white so I can see it. You can put it whatever you want to. And then I'm going to change the edges here so that it fits. Okay, so one option here is to select the best fit here. So if you do that, you'll see that the health fits inside the bar and inside the box, and that looks way better, I think. So select the best fit, and then you can select what the minimum size and maximum size if you want to rescale this. Okay, so as you saw before in the demo I made, you'll see that this health bar was moving with the resolution. So as you can see now, it doesn't fit when I change the resolutions. So whenever I go to a lesser resolution, you'll see that it overlaps the health bar because it's not moving. And the reason it's not moving is because of the anchors here. If I select any UI element that has a parent, you'll see that in the parent there's placed 4 anchors, and these anchors are like some white squares not squares, for triangles. And every single triangle here has a relationship to one of the edges, one of the corners of the child UI element. So if you look in the background, the canvas, in the middle of the canvas displays 4 anchors, and this anchor here, top left one, has a relationship to the top left corner, and same goes for the right top, has a relationship to the right top corner. And that relationship is that whenever we rescale something, the distance between the anchor and the corner of the sprite has to be exactly the same. And because this anchor is placed in the middle of the parent, whenever we change the scale of the parent, it keeps the same distance here. But when we change the screen size, nothing is changing between these two distances, so they keep the same, almost the same placement, and that's why it doesn't move with the resolution. What you can do, you can also, if you see here, when we stretch down here, you can see that the angles and the distance between the corners is the same. But if we would take these apart, you'll see that every single anchor here is split up, so the distance would change a little. And now we can stretch stuff. So if we would do like this now when they're split, then you'll see that stuff is stretching because they are split up. Anyway, we want to keep our anchors together because when they are apart, we have 4 different anchor points, which makes stuff stretch and get overlapped. We want to keep them together in one part, but we want to put them in the top left corner actually. See if I can drag all of them at once. There we go. It's because now the distance between the top left corner and every single corner on my health bar is going to be the same constantly. So whenever I change my resolution, as you see here, the health bar is going to move with the resolution because the top left corner changes, and the distance has to be the same all the time. So now it fits all resolutions. One more thing about these anchors, sorry if it's getting a little boring with that, is that there are some preset anchors here that Unity made for you, and these are the most common uses of anchors. So if, for example, if you want them to, you want your UI element to stretch in the middle, then you can select one of these anchors here in the middle, for example, and select stretch, for example. Yeah, that's about it for the visual part. As you can see, all other things are fine because text has anchor in the middle of its parent, health background has anchor in the middle of its parent, and yeah, the background has an anchor in the top left corner of the canvas. But now we have the visual part, now we can start working on scripting this so that our health will be reduced. Okay, so before we start scripting, I want to show you something because I've tried to visualize what's actually happening when we reduce our health. As I showed you before, that we're going to move the green part of the health bar to the left to simulate that we are losing health. And as you can see, we have an example here where our health bar is placed in position 0.2. And this position is just imaginary. It's not for sure that our health bar is placed there. This is just an example. But let's say 0.2, where 0 is the x-coordinate and 2 is the y-coordinate. So we have the position here in the top left corner here. That's the anchor point. So this position is 0.2. If we look at the length of the bar, it has a length of 10. Sorry, not 100. It has a length of 10. And this is the length that we need to figure out what position our bar needs to be in when we have 0% health, and what position our bar needs to be in when we have 100% health. Because the position our bar is placed in when we start our game is the position it needs to have when we have 100% health. That means that our maximum value of our x-coordinate is the x position when we start. That also means that we can figure out what position we need when we have 0% health by taking the starting position of x and deducting the length of the bar from it. So that means that we take our start position minus the bar length, which gives us minus 10 because the length is 10. That means that whenever we have 0% health and our bar is moved all the way to the left, then our x position of the bar is minus 10. So we know the minimum value of our x is -10, and the maximum value of our x position is 0. And it's in between that range we need to calculate where to place the bar according to our health. So I hope that makes a little sense. So now we can start scripting. So if we go back into Unity and open our script, we can start getting our transform, because we need to move our health bar. So we need to make, let me zoom in a little, we need to make a public rect transform. And we'll just call this transform health transform. And this is the bar that we're going to move back and forth when we need to reduce our health. We also need to store the Y position, because when we move our bar, we only want to move it on the x-axis. And instead of just accessing the Y position on the transform all the time, we can just store it. So we make a private float called cast Y. So we're going to store our Y position in this one. So we need to store our maximum x value and our minimum x value. And that's what I showed you here before, that our maximum x value is when we have 100% health, and the minimum x value is when we have 0% health, which is the start position minus the length of the bar. So we need to create two variables here, one called a float here called minimum x value, and another float called max x value. We also need to store our current health and our maximum health, because we need to calculate the percentage of our health compared to the maximum health at some point. So for example, if we have 50% health, we need to know where to place the bar when it's 50% and where to place it when it's 10% and so on. So we need two variables here. We can make a private one first called current health, and that one is going to contain the current health, the health the player has at the moment. Then we're going to make a public one, and we're going to call that max health. Okay, so now we have our maximum health, which is the health that we are starting with, and we have our current health, which is the health we have at the moment. We also need to change the text. If we go here, we have this health text underneath our health bar, and we also need to change that. So if we write public text, and if you can't access this text text type, you have to include Unity engine.ui up here in your namespace, and we're just going to call it health text. Okay, so now we have our variable set. The next thing we need to do is to set everything up in start, and that's all the variables we just made. We need to set them up here. So cast Y is health transform, because that's the bar we're going to move, dot position dot Y. So we're just going to store this cast Y so we can use it later. Then we need our max value, max x value, and that's actually just our health transform dot position dot x, because our max value is the starting position of the green bar. Then we have our minimum value, and that's equal to health transform dot position dot x minus health transform dot rect dot width. So our minimum value is equal to the starting position, or the position we have now, minus the width of the rectangle. So in this case it would be that -10 we looked at before. Then we need to set our current health. Our current health is automatically equal to our maximum health when we start. Float to int, of course. I need to change my max health into an integer. Sorry about that. Okay. So what we need to do is that we need to figure out how to translate our range, which is the range from 0 to our max health, and we need to translate that into something from our maximum X position to our minimum X position. So we know that if we have 50 health or 10 health or whatever, we need to translate that 10 of health into the correct position on the x-axis. So to translate the health into a position, we need to create a new method, a mapping method. So I'm going to try to explain you by using this image. As you can see, we have a health range from 0 to 100, for example. It can be 1,000 or whatever you put your maximum health. But for now, let's just look at the example where we have 100 as maximum health. Then we need to translate this health into a x position between -10, for example, and the max value of 0, as we saw in the example earlier. So translate 0 to 100 to -10 to 0. If we look in the bottom here, we can see that we have a scale here that shows how these different numbers stack up. So if we have 100 health, the position should also be 0. If you have 50 health, for example, the position should be -5. And if we have 0 health, the position should be -10. So we need to make some function that can translate these numbers. And let's have a look at that. In the top here, we still have the scale, so we can look at it. And let's see how we can do this. So if we have 50 health, and we want to translate that 50 health into a scale from -10 to 0, then we can use this formula to calculate it. So x is our current health, which is 50. We have in minimum, which is the minimum health we can have, which is 0. Then we have in maximum, which is our maximum health, which is 100. And then we have out minimum, which is the minimum output we want, which is -10, because that's the minimum value of the x-axis. And then we have out maximum, which is 0, because that's the maximum our x-axis can go to. So if we calculate this together and use this formula down here, where we take the x minus in minimum multiplied by out max minus out minimum divided by in max minus in minimum and add the out minimum, well, then we get the correct position, which is -5. And it's actually this it's this formula we need to create a function that can run. So if we jump back into our script, go to the bottom here and create a new private void function, and we call it map values. Okay, so we need to put all these as parameters. So we have an x, which is our health, and we have in minimum, which is the minimum health, which would be 0, and we have float, which is our in max, which is our maximum health, which is 100. Then we have our one more float called out minimum, which is the lowest value on the x-axis, which is -10. And then we have another float, which is out max. So, and out max is of course our start position, which is 0. So that's the maximum value our position can have. And then we need to calculate all this. Actually, I want to return this value, so we're just gonna do so it returns a float. And then we're gonna return x minus in minimum multiplied by out max minus out minimum, and we're going to divide that by in maximum minus in minimum, and we're going to add out minimum in the end. So now this function actually returns the correct value. So if we give this function the right parameters, and let's say we have 50 health, then it's going to return -5, because we know that we need to put our health bar at the position -5. Okay, so before we can start creating the method that has to handle the health bar, we need to have access to the color of the image. So we need to create a public image here called visual health. And this is basically going to be the green bar that we have to move around. And yeah, we need access to it to just make this field. So now we can start creating the method that has to handle the health bar. So just made a private void handle health bar, handle health, and just place it under update. So the first thing we need to do is to handle the text. So we have some field called health text, I think, yeah, the text, and that equals health plus current health. And this basically makes sure that this health is going to be updated according to the health we have. So this health text here fits. When we have 50 health, it's going to be 50 health and so on. Okay, so next thing we need to do is to handle the x position of the health bar. And we can make a float to contain this and call it the current x value. And that equal to map values. So we need to give it our current x, and that is actually our current health. We need to give it a minimum, which is 0 health. We need to give it in maximum, which is max health. We need to get out minimum, which is minimum x value, and out maximum, which is our maximum x value. So now this current x value is always going to be equal to the correct position of our health bar, because we made that map function before. So next thing we have to do is to what do we have to do? We have to translate the position of our health bar. We need to transform it to the right position, our health bar. So our health dot transform that position equals new vector 3, and that is our current x value, and that's just our cached y position. So when we've done that, we can actually move our health bar around, but we also want to be able to change the color of our health bar. And if we go into Unity here and look at the colors scheme here, if we open one up here, I don't know how much you can see on these numbers, but if we start in the green, let's say we have very, very green color here, you can see that when it goes from the green and down towards the reddish area, it only changes the color R, which is the red color. So if I basically would set everything else from 0, then make the green color 255 and the blue color 0 and the alpha 255, I could start from this color, and the only thing I have to change is actually the red color here. So as long as I have more than 50% health, I want to change the red color. And then when I go to 50% health, you can see the green color starts to change here, which is the slider. So when I have more than 50% health, I want to change the red color. When I go under 50% health, I want to change the green color instead, so it goes to reddish. And that's what I'm going to do inside my script. One more thing when I remember, I want to show you a bug in the new UI system. If I take my health bar here, which is my health, and as you can see, it has this this canvas renderer component on it, and there is one tick here that says hide if invisible. This means that if something is invisible, then it's not going to be drawn. And as you can see, if I take my health bar here and drive it all the way up and take it all the way down, it's still invisible, even though it's visible again. So I think there's a little bug they need to fix when they release the full version. So the simplest fix for this is just to remove this hide if invisible marker, and then you can take stuff out and put it back in without it being invisible. Because if that hide if invisible is on, then if you get to 0 health, then you won't be able to get your health back, for example, because you can't see it. Yes. Okay. So let's get back into the code and change that red color and the green color. So first we need to make 2 if statements, because we need to distinguish between having more than 50% health and less than 50% health when we change the color. So if we make an if statement that says if our current health is greater than our max health divided by 2, which is actually 50% health. Well, then I have more than 50% health. Else, else I have less than 50% health. Okay, so we made that visual health image here before, and that's the one we have to change the color of. So visual health dot color equals new color 32. And the reason I'm using color 32 is because I can select different colors from 0 to 255 for the red, green, and blue color. And I can also select the alpha. So first time we're going to change the color is when we are from 50% health until 100% health. And at that time, as I showed you before, we only want to change the red color. So I'm going to make that map values method again, and I'm going to map 50% health to 100% health. I'm going to map that into 0 to 255 so that we have that range of health converted into colors from 0 to 255. So I'm going to map values, and the first value is my health, so current health, and the minimum value is the maximum health divided by 2 because it's 50% we're looking at right now. And then I have my in maximum, which is my max health, of course, and then I have my out minimum, and here you have to switch them because we are going from the other side of the scale. If you saw before when I was tempering with the colors, that it starts on 0 and I have to go upward. So my minimum is actually my maximum, which is 255, and my maximum is 0, which is my minimum. And then we want the green color, which is 255, the blue color is 0, and the alpha is 255, because I read it out there before. Okay, so now it wants to convert float to byte, so I just need to convert this one to a byte, because it doesn't take float, that color 32. Okay, so now we have the visual part of the first color. Basically I can take this, and I'm not even sure if I want to copy it. Let's just write it again. So I can take and write the opposite side of the scale. So when we get under 50% health, we have to do exactly the same. New color. And then we have to say that the first value is 255 because that's where we ended before. The next value is the green one, and it's here we want to map the colors this time, so map values. And we're going to start with our current health, and minimum value is 0. The in maximum health is max health divided by 2, because the maximum health when we are down here is 0 to 50%. And the next minimum is 0, and here is 255. So here is correct, because we go from the other side of the scale downwards. And then our blue color is 0, and the alpha is 255. If you are confused about what I mean with you need to cast this one first. If you're confused about what I mean about going to the other side of the scale, if we have a look here on the player, you can see that when I go from green over to the reddish, the red slider here goes from 0 to 255. So you can see here it goes from 0 to 255. Then when I start going from 255, when I'm done with 255 and I want to go from in the green color, it goes from 255 to 0, so that's the opposite direction. So you can see here, when I scroll this down if I can, you can see that it goes from 255 over and down to 0. Okay, so now we have written the code that changes the position and changes the color. So the next thing we need to do is to make sure that we don't take damage all the time, and we need to make some functionality that doesn't, when we're simulating this, we don't want to take damage every frame, because if we have 100 frames per second, then we die in a second, for example, and we want to avoid that. So we need to make two more variables here. We need to make a public float called cooldown. This is only for a show or only for simulation. And then we have a boolean called on cooldown. So this one indicates if our damage is on cooldown, and if this one is true, then we can't take any damage, and this one indicates how long we have to be on cooldown. So we're just gonna say on CD equals false from the beginning. And then we need to make a coroutine we start every time we take damage, so that that handles this on cooldown boolean. And I'm just gonna make it here, messing a little around in my code. So I enumerator and cooldown. Oh, oops. Cooldown damage, and on CD is set to true because we just took damage. Then we're gonna yield return new wait for seconds, and then we're gonna wait for my cooldown, and then I'm gonna say on CD false. So what this does is, like, this is an I enumerator, which is a code, can be triggered as a coroutine. So when this one starts, when I call this whenever I take damage, it tells me that it tells the on cooldown is true, and then it waits for as long as the cooldown is, let's say half a second or whatever, maybe less, and then it says that I'm on cooldown false, so I can take damage again. Then I just need to look at this on CD boolean every time I want to take damage. And yeah, and then we need to take some damage. Whenever I take damage, I want to adjust my health, and I don't want to put my handle health in update and make an if statement or something, because then I have to look at it all the time. What I want to do is that I want to create a property for my current health, if I could find it. Cast current health is right here. So you can either press Control RE to open this, or you can write the code yourself. I'm not sure if you're working in Visual Studio. And I'm just gonna make this one private because there's no point in making it public right now. So whenever I set my health, I also want to call this handle health method. So underneath set health, I'm just gonna write handle health, which means that every time I access this property to change the health, well, then I'm gonna call the handle health method, which adjusts the position of my health bar, and it adjusts the color of the health bar, and that's going to be automatically every time I say health minus minus, for example, or minus 10 or whatever. So now we can write the code that actually does damage to the character. So if I go down to my onTriggerStay method, then I can start writing the code that says if I want to take damage, then if on CD. So if I'm not on a cooldown and my current health is greater than 0, well, then we just start our coroutine, and we want to start that cooldown damage, I called it. So what this does is that if I'm not on a cooldown and my health is greater than 0, then I start my coroutine, which gives me a cooldown for at X amount of seconds, and then I'm going to say current health. And remember to take the one that starts with big capital letters here, because that's the property. If you use the other one, then you're not going to handle your health. So current health, which is this one, and if I set that value, it will go in, set the value, and call handle health after. So I'm just going to say current health -1. And then I need exactly the same code down here, where I just +1 instead of -1, and then save. So before we play our game, I just noticed that we need to do one more thing. Of course, we need to change the condition here from larger than 0 to less than max health here. So we can get healed as long as we have less than our maximum health. One more thing, a little bug, or what should we call it? I'm not sure if it's a bug, or maybe I misunderstood something about this canvas renderer, is that as you can see, if I disable this canvas renderer and I run my game, it actually enables it again. So if I say that it should hide when invisible and I disable it, well, then it enables when it starts automatically. And I have tried from my script that if I go here and say from start, say transform, health transform that get component canvas renderer, and I say that hide if invisible is false, well, even though I do that, it still enables it by default whenever I play my game. So the only way to get around this, I figured, is that you can go to your update and make an if statement and put it in here and say if health branch from the get component, if that invisible is true, well then we put it as false. And that's the only way I can get around it, because apparently it enables the hide if invisible somewhere after start has been called. Because if I put a debug.log here, it only runs one time. As you can see, if I run this game, it only called it once. It doesn't call it all the time. So apparently after start has been called, it calls that thing. Anyway, enough with the expense. Let's play our game and test if it works. So if I maximize here and I go into the red, you can see my health bar is reduced and it goes into the red color, and then I'm dead. And then if I go to the green one, you can see my health bar is raised again, and then I get my health back and the color changes to green. And that's how you can create a health bar with the new UI system. As usual, I have provided you with some links to all the assets used in this tutorial, including a link to the full project if you want to play around with that. And please let me know what you thought about this tutorial in the comment section. What was good, what was bad, what should I do better? And let me know if there's some requests about some specific topics you want me to make tutorials about. And please don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribing. Thanks for watching.